Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Neil Juris, the Senior Director of Communications and Engagement for the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. We're also known as MORPC. I'm also proud to be a member of the CMC Board of Trustees. We'd like to thank today's forum sponsors, GBQ and Otterbein University. We'd also like to thank our partner, the Grange Insurance Otterbein Center, for hosting us again. We're also grateful to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting today's live stream, which is being carried on CMC's social media platforms. Let's thank all of our supporters for today's forum. Today's forum focuses on how Central Ohio communities are preparing for a $20 billion impact. The changes to our communities from Intel's 2 new semiconductor plants will go far beyond the investment itself, and Intel's investment is just the start. Today we'll hear from the mayors of 3 key cities on how each is planning for and embracing for Central Ohio's high-growth future. Chandler, Arizona, also home to an Intel plant, had 1 high school before Intel moved in. It's now the 2nd largest school district in Arizona. Will our towns be able to keep up with the region's exciting growth and even stay ahead? That is the question we will be asking today. To introduce today's panel, please welcome John Comerford, the president of today's forum sponsor, Otterbein University. John, the podium is all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see a full room. To paraphrase our president from when he was vice president, this is a big freaking deal. And so it's understandable we have a full room. And I think about why we have a full room for an event like this. And yes, the numbers are huge. Intel's going to bring a $20 billion investment, 3,000 well-paying jobs. And that's just phase 1 of what could be a 5-phase prospect. And so it is a big deal in that respect. It's also a big deal for our communities. And that's what we're all here to figure out. Everyone in this room is trying to figure out where the puck will be so we can be ready when it gets to us. That's what's bringing us all together. And today we get to hear from 3-4 outstanding leaders who are already thinking about where the puck is going to be in their communities. I know at Otterbein we're thinking about this already. We're thinking about this because I can't have a conversation in Central Ohio that doesn't begin and end with workforce, workforce, workforce. We're going to need the talent to capture these full opportunities. And so that's about serving our current students, making sure that they are ready with the right curriculum, our engineering programs and everything else, and the right hands-on applied experiences to make sure they're ready to go right to work when we need them. It's also important in higher education that we reach out to new populations, adult learners, short-term certificates, things like that, to make sure that we lift up everyone with these opportunities. And so we're all excited to learn from today's panel, and it is my great opportunity to be able to welcome them. We have Donald Barnard, the mayor of Johnstown, Lori Jadwin, the mayor of Gahanna, Sloan Spalding, the mayor of New Albany, and our host, Carrie McCarthy, executive director of the Ohio Mayors Alliance and the Ohio Mayors Alliance Foundation. Please welcome our guests today.
Well, welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. I am thrilled to be here and hosting this discussion. There's 2 reasons why I'm very honored to be doing this. One, it's close to home. I grew up in Western Licking County. My parents, who are here with us today, still live on Altville Road, about 10 miles from the site in Alexandria. And we've been having a lot of conversations about what the future of Alexandria might look like, about what the beautiful farmland that surrounds their home might look like. And so I'm thrilled to have them here to join us for this discussion. But the other reason I'm excited to be here is because I get the opportunity to talk with some great local leaders. I'm a little biased. I really think mayors are some of our strongest leaders. They're practical and pragmatic. They're common sense problem solvers, and we have 3 great leaders here today to talk about how they're planning and preparing their communities for a very exciting opportunity that we have here in Central Ohio and Ohio as a whole. So I'm really excited to be with you all today, and I also want to thank the CMC for the work that they do. It's just been a tremendous opportunity to have a space like this to come together as a community and talk about the challenges and opportunities that we have as a region and as communities across Central Ohio. I would be horribly remiss if I did not also take this moment to wish my wife a happy birthday. So happy birthday, Lori. I will not embarrass you any further. How about that? Well, let's jump in. The stage has been set. We understand the potential, the opportunity, the excitement that comes along with an announcement like Intel coming to Ohio. But let's jump right in and let's hear from the mayors who are on the front lines of planning and preparing their communities for this great opportunity. So I'm just going to open it up with one stage-setting question. Just ask each of you to kind of briefly describe your communities, give the audience a flavor for your communities, and then in a sentence or two, try to summarize how your residents are feeling about having the largest economic development project in Ohio history come into their backyard. So, Mayor Barner, why don't we start with you?
Well, thank you guys for having me here tonight. Thank you to Otterbein. Special thank you to GBQ. They actually gave me my first job in Columbus 23 years ago, so thank you to them. Johnstown is home. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a small city. We just hit city status about a year and a half ago, about 5,100 individuals, but it's truly a home. It's a place where citizens love to be. They're very proud of their city. They're very proud of their school district. And I think the biggest thing, the impact of Intel and how they reacted to it, it was a lot like the death of a family member. It was, and the cities went through grief, losing farmlands, losing things like that. But as time has went on, they've seen the benefits of what Intel is going to bring. They've seen the opportunities that are going to come. So for them, it's been stages of going through this. And I think right now, majority of citizens of Johnstown are really excited about Intel.
That's great. Thank you. Mayor Chandler?
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. And equally, thank you very much for the invitation to participate today. Thank you to CMC and to our sponsors. For those of you who might not be familiar with Gahanna, we are located in the northeast quadrant of Franklin County. We're 10 minutes northeast of downtown, 10 minutes southwest of the Intel site. So we're kind of right in the middle of that bullseye. We're a city of about 36,000 people, but we feel more like a village of 3,600. It's a community that is welcoming, it's warm, it's a generous community. It's a community with great character, and like Johnstown, its residents take great pride in Gahanna. We're known for things like the herb capital of Ohio, Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival, Holiday Lights, and of course our Creekside district that has the big Walnut Creek meandering right through the heart of our downtown. We are an older city. Next year, Gahanna will celebrate the 175th anniversary of its founding. And we are largely built out. But even with that, over the last 2 years especially, we have seen significant growth. We've had close to $500 million of new capital investment in new construction and expansion projects. And that growth is not slowing down, in large part to what's happening just to the north of us. With our proximity to John Glenn International Airport and the junction of 270 and 670, we are well positioned to continue to be a prime location for future growth. Like many other communities, I think that there's a mixed reaction. I think a lot of our businesses and our residents are very excited about the potential that Intel brings for us and everything that's happening with the growth around us. It certainly has enveloped us in a protective bubble with the recession because we have not seen a slowdown in the growth. But yet there's trepidation. A fear of the unknown is always a great driver, and we don't know for sure what's coming and what the impacts will be. But the more we can continue to communicate and work together, I think that we can allay those concerns and plan for the future.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Spalding.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say thank you to CMC for hosting this event, for Sophia and Doug for the warm welcome, and it's my privilege to share this stage today with my fellow mayors to talk about these important topics. But the question is to describe briefly New Albany, and I know we have a short period of time, so I'm going to try to choose my words carefully, but Kind of want to start in the beginning. New Albany was founded in 1837, and much like Ohio, was a predominantly rural and agricultural community. For much of its existence, it was just a quaint village on the road between Granville and Dublin, literally a one-stop sign kind of town. And then in the late 80s, Central Ohio business leader decided to start buying some property around the village, hired a group of really top-notch professionals to think about a way to design and plan a community from the beginning, really paying credence to its bucolic roots. We all sort of know the rest of that story. But at its heart, New Albany is known for being a thoughtful, planful, purposeful community with high standards. But I'm asked the question, what makes New Albany special? And for me, it's the people. I've lived all across the United States in a variety of different places, and the people in New Albany are special. We are very fortunate to have some extremely talented residents, incredible civic leaders, and world-class business partners, all rowing in the same direction, going the extra mile to help make our community great. Our tagline says it all: community connects us, and it really does. Is at the focus of everything that we do. And I'll just give a very short answer about how the residents feel about Intel. I think it's true of most communities around Central Ohio. We're excited about the future, and we're a little anxious about the pace of change.
Well, thank you, mayors. And I want to kind of pick up on that point. Having worked with elected officials, over my career, especially folks at the local level, change is always hard, no matter what it is, from a small thing to trash collection and a bike lane coming in to something as significant as a major economic development project happening right in your backyard. The question I wanted to ask is how do you balance, as a leader, how do you balance the natural discomfort towards change with the really promising economic opportunities that will come with something like the Intel development? And I'll just put that on the table, and whoever wants to jump, go for it.
Well, I'll go ahead and kick us off. I think it's important, as we're going through this process of change, that everyone be as transparent and open as possible. We try to push as much information out as possible to our community, whether it's through websites, newsletters, social media. Everything from road constructions to updates on the actual construction project. We know the best approach is to make sure everyone is informed. And this project, just to back up a little bit, was a little bit different than the way New Albany has typically handled economic development projects, where in the past we've had everything pretty well thought out and planned. This project happened super fast. Remember, we first got that call in May that New Albany was being asked to submit a proposal on behalf of the state of Ohio for this opportunity. It was a long shot, but we're pretty good at long shots. We have a really good team. And so as that process kept playing out, we kept making the cuts. And at some point, it's, that saying, we might have caught the fish, but now we got to get it in the boat. And they said in Jaws, you need a bigger boat. And that's why this became a regional project, a state project, and a national project. And New Albany is very proud to play a role in that. And so I think our citizens know that this is a great opportunity for us, but at the same time we have to be transparent about the process and really listen to what people, their expectations and needs are as this develops.
That's great. Thank you. Mayor Chapman? Yeah.
I had to actually chuckle when I saw this question because I know there's some economic development experts in this room, and I thought, gee, if I had the answer to how to allay resident concerns about change, I'm pretty sure I could get a job as the highest paid economic development director in the nation, because that's something we all face. I agree with Mayor Spalding. I think you have to communicate and engage with residents. You have to also, as established communities that we all are, I think you have to find a way to balance celebrating the past, honoring the present, but then planning for the future. And you have to continue to share with residents that moving forward is not letting go of who you've been and who you are. And that takes focusing on the strengths that you have as a city and identifying who you are as a community and how, for Gahanna, how we fit within that regional ecosystem. What do we bring to the table as a community? What do we add to the growth that's happening around us? So staying focused on the strengths that we have and enhancing those strengths ensures consistency, which provides that baseline level of comfort for residents. Again, making sure that they're engaged, making sure that they have a voice in the process, that they know that they're not losing the heart of what they love most about Gahanna is of prime importance to us. But focusing on our strengths, our school system, our diverse community, the parks and open spaces that we have. I just spoke at our senior center about a week ago, and one of them asked me about Intel and expressed concern that with the growth that's happening, are we going to lose our parks? And I said, no, that's one of the things we love most about Gahanna. We have, I think, something like 9 times the national average of acreage to 1,000 residents. We love our parks in Gahanna, and that's a vital part of ensuring a high quality of life for our residents. So maintaining that high quality of life not only reaffirms our commitment to them, but it also makes us appealing to those new residents who might be looking to relocate here because of the growth that's happening to the north of us. But again, just in keeping them in the loop and making sure that they're heard, I think is critical.
That's great.
I think for Johnstown, it's a little bit, we're focused on communication and empathy with our residents. I think it's a little bit different than with Gahanna and New Albany. Johnstown's borders really are not established. It's a lot of farmland. The city of Johnstown has established borders, but the area that people call Johnstown. Monroe Township is Johnstown. It's an important part of us. And for the residents, trying to understand what they're going through, we are so excited about Intel, but it's a lot of change. Johnstown is very rural, and that's a word I've been practicing all week. I can't say rural right, so. My wife laughs at me all the time. So Johnstown's very rural, and people don't want to lose that. And something I try to emphasize to them is when they say, we don't want to lose Johnstown. And I ask them, do you not want to lose Johnstown in 1995, 85, 75? What point of Johnstown is the Johnstown you're wanting to hold on to? And it's not as a specific this building or that building. It's the feeling of the town and keeping that feeling. And it's something that we can do. It's something that we can, with all the new businesses coming, with all new residents coming, that we can keep that heart and we can make sure that's passed on to generation. And that's what I think all of us want, is that the history of the town stays there, and you build upon that, and you build smartly.
And Mayor, I'll ask you a quick follow-up question because, when we spoke earlier in the run-up to this, you described to me how you came to the job and some of the tumult that was happening in Johnstown politically. And so I just wondered if you might share that and then expand upon how, you've taken this, in my view, sort of reluctant leadership role at this critical moment for Johnstown.
So about a year and 2 months ago, I was just a regular citizen that was in charge of their HOA, and I continually had to go to the city council to try to get a second entrance to our homeowners association, because we had about 100 homes, we were getting about 150 more, and we had one entrance, and city council didn't want to listen to me. We had a couple people resign. They asked me to fill a spot. I filled a spot. Then during the summer, we had 2 members recalled. Our mayor recalled, and our president of council recalled. Another member resigned, and they asked me to be mayor. And my family can't believe it. Anybody who knows me can't believe it that I haven't said something stupid and screwed up yet. But I try to tell people that what our town needs most is kindness and loving each other and trying to keep that closeness. If we fight, our town's just going to be broken apart. And so we've tried to come together. We have such a close relationship with our school district, trying to work together so that when Johnstown builds in the future, that we build together, that our schools can handle the incoming people that are coming. We don't want to focus so much on growth that we forget about our school and our school gets left behind. So that is our main focus right now and how I got the job somehow.
Thank you. So, it occurs to me that your communities, this region, Licking County, Eastern Franklin County, Western Licking County, growth is not new. I think about Johnstown and, from my perspective, knowing Johnstown, growing up in that community, but living in Columbus now, over the last decade or so, I've met countless people that work here in Columbus and said, oh, I live in Johnstown. So Johnstown's experienced some growth over the last decade and change. Gahanna, the same. New Albany, of course, the same. Let's talk a little bit about how your communities are preparing for some of the specific things that you need to plan for. And let's start with housing. That's been a big topic of conversation here in Central Ohio. Supply exceeding demand, and how do we meet that demand? And then, how do we meet that demand once these facilities are operational? So, Mayor Jadwin, I'll start with you this time.
I get for making eye contact. It's good. No, I'm fine. Just look straight ahead. Housing is a challenge. It's a challenge for every community, but again, I'm going to keep referring back to the fact that we are largely a built-out community, much like Reynoldsburg, Whitehall, Bexley. We've all had conversations. I saw my friend Ben Kessler come in here. I know we've been having dialogue. Gahanna is a community where 60 to 62% of our population has lived there their whole lives. So ensuring that we have that diversity of housing options, affordable housing options that meet their needs through every phase of life is critical. And everybody from the young professional who's just starting out to empty nesters that don't need a 4-bedroom house anymore but still want to live in their community, to senior citizens who are retired and just need a place to live and maybe don't need to take care of a home anymore. So those conversations were happening before the Intel announcement, and that Intel announcement has just exacerbated the demand, and how are we going to address the supplies for this? In 2021, we had 3 multifamily housing projects that were approved. It's the first time we had multifamily projects approved since 2015 in the city of Gahanna. Those 3 projects combined will add about 400 units to the community. So those are underway now, and as we've worked with developers in those projects, making sure that there is a component of affordability built into those numbers and those units has been part of those discussions and something that we have required as well. We also need to look at strengthening the core of our downtown to add housing there. So looking for opportunities to add housing in areas where it makes sense, not to add just to add, but to smart add, to add where it's needed. So back in 2021, we started a redevelopment strategy for our Creekside district, finished that up in 2022, engaged our CIC, who purchased a little bit more than 4 acres in the downtown area, and now we are having conversations with developers to come in and add a variety of housing options in the heart of our downtown, everything from multifamily to townhome projects for sale product that would be there, and again, adding to that diversity of housing options that we have. From a longer-term strategy, we'll have to look at engaging our major corridors through our city. How can we can redevelop, how we can revitalize those areas. Again, we don't have much land available. I'm a little envious of you in that regard. So we have to really be strategic and smart about how we want to approach housing. But if we want to attract the jobs, we have to have the housing to support that. So they are intrinsically linked. So having that strategy forward is a priority.
Yeah, housing's a big part of this conversation, and thankfully the region's been discussing this issue for a number of years. It's not a new topic, certainly something we discussed long before these large economic development projects were announced. But those needs have certainly accelerated with these new partners coming to our community. MORPC has done their study over the next 25 years, and the 15-county Central Ohio region is on track to reach nearly 3.15 million residents by 2050. Which actually is sort of a slowdown in the growth rate that we're currently experiencing. So that number could be even higher. But that's 725,000 people over the next 25 years. 270,000 additional households will be needed, and we'll have over 350,000 new jobs. So that's a lot of growth in a region over 25 years. It's going to take a regional approach to deal with this housing issue. And I give a lot of credit to Mayor Ginther and the Columbus City Council for really leading the way and ringing the bell about the housing deficiency in the region. They put a lot of time and resource and leadership behind this issue, and they should be complimented for that. But again, the housing shortage won't be solved just by one community. We're all going to have to work together to solve that. At the Intel announcement, I was quoted as saying that this was the culmination of collaboration, being able to bring Intel to Ohio, which is true. but the success of the entire thing will continue to be collaborative. And so I look forward to working with all the jurisdictions on the housing issue. And, as Mayor Ginther said just a couple of weeks ago, we need housing types of all sorts, from $1 million homes to affordable single family residence to workforce rental options. The entire portfolio has to be provided. And I look forward to working with MORPC, the Mayors and Managers Association of Central Ohio, and addressing some of those issues. But part of it, to be fair, is sort of a communication effort with our residents. They need to understand the development pressure that we're facing and that we need to think differently about housing. Every time a project comes up, there's always members of the community that don't want to have that project in their backyard, which, trust me, I have a project in my backyard. And, it's tough to live through. But we just have to embrace the change, embrace the growth opportunities, and just think differently about housing in our community. And don't forget, New Albany, in 2010, just like, Johnstown became a city. We only passed the 5,000 resident threshold in 2010. And since that time, we've almost tripled the number of residents in New Albany. So there's a lot of growth there. And this morning, I just had an opportunity to talk to the New Albany Realty Association and talking about future housing starts in our community. And as you start stacking up these projects that were sort of in the pipeline, there's almost 500 residential starts over the next 3 to 5 years in today's conversations. So there's going to be a lot of growth in the area, and we need to embrace it.
Thank you.
Johnstown we've got the room to grow. We've got the room for housing. But just throwing housing into a small city like that is not the answer for the city. Residents cost money. It costs money for services. So Johnstown has to do it smart. We have to bring the industry in. We need the industry in to help pay for the infrastructure, to help pay for the residents that will be coming. So our number one focus right now is bringing industry into our town, bringing that tax base in, and then look at more of the housing. That doesn't mean we're closed off to housing. We have approximately 200 different housing starts in the next year or next couple of years. We've got an apartment complex going up, then at least another 160 homes being built. So we have the housing coming, but we have to do it smart. And like the mayor said, smart addition. It's so easy to follow that almighty dollar and say, oh, we're going to get this money from this developer to build this here. But doing that, how does it impact our city? How does it impact infrastructure? I'm sure all of you in here have went up to Millersburg, Amish country, and driven through Johnstown at 37 and 62. It's a bottleneck. Those are things that we have to figure out before we add another 1,000, 2,000 people. Because if we add that, it's just going to cause more chaos. So we encourage the housing, but we have to do it slowly and over time.
Well, that's a perfect segue to the next topic I wanted to ask, is about transportation infrastructure. This is an area where, again, this region has seen some, expansion with 161 and a lot of transportation changes. And we've, as a community, have talked a lot about the future transit needs and transportation needs of our region. But I was hoping you could talk a bit, each of the mayors could talk a little bit about, those challenges. How do we prepare to make sure that Intel has the workforce it needs and they can get there, and then how it affects your communities? And I'm curious to know two things. One, the short term. How does it affect things in the short term? You've got a lot of construction out there. Are there challenges? And then the long term. What are you really seeing in terms of the long-term needs? I know we all talked a bit about a lot of projections and how to really align the projections with, the planning process. So it's a fairly broad question, so I'm sorry for that, but maybe you can help fill in some blanks for me.
As I mentioned a minute ago, 37 and 62, it's a interchange. It's right in the heart of our city. I think Intel's concerned about it, the state's concerned about it. So we've been working with the local officials, county, state, even the federal government on looking how we can fix this problem, how we can rectify this problem. Before Intel was announced, the city of Johnstown was looking at putting a traffic circle there. The traffic circle now is a dead program because it will not work for the future of what's coming. So we're looking at different options. There's different options that Intel would like to do, that we would like to do, that take the big trucks, take a lot of cars, and move them around Johnstown. That keeps our downtown the way it was originally built, and moves that state route around us. That's one thing we're looking at. There's so much things that are being talked about, but no one has put in place yet. So I know the state is working. I know the city of New Albany is working with the state to find different routes for Intel, because Intel needs those routes to get their product out.
I'm really happy to hear the conversations are happening around the broader evaluation. US 62 is a connector from Gahanna to Johnstown through New Albany, and then obviously from Johnstown to Intel. And US 62 runs right through the heart of Gahanna, right through our Creekside district, which is a 2-lane road with no way to widen that road. So transportation, I was laughing, I'm like, we could do a whole segment, just a whole CMC forum on infrastructure needs around this. But transportation improvements are really going to be critical in how we look at that. In the short term, looking at things like incorporation of CODA into broader strategies and how we can help alleviate some of the burdens that currently are there. But with the growth that we have at the north, with the growth that we have happening in Jefferson Township to our east and beyond that, a lot of Gahanna traffic is commuter-based. It comes through Gahanna because they're heading to those higher capacity roadways, Morrison 270, 270, and 670. So how do we look at traffic dampening techniques? How can we incorporate those into what we have right now? Kind of the short-term version. Longer term, how we can rebuild some of our intersections. Stigler-Agler 62 on our west side has been a problem for years. I suspect that's going to get worse. How do we deal with traffic going up and down 62 through Mill Street or Reynoldsburg, New Albany Road or Hamilton Road, which is a major corridor through the Mid-Ohio region? So those are the longer term challenges that we're going to have. But then there's also the infrastructure challenges with regard to utilities. Water, stormwater, sewer, those things that when you're adding housing, you're adding jobs, you're adding housing, you're adding housing, you're adding those utility services that need to be provided. And to Mayor Barnard's point, that costs money. Gahanna is a community that we're not rich enough to be able to do that on our own, and we're not poor enough to access the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been available thus far. So how are we going to address those infrastructure utilities, understanding those demands, and then understanding what the impacts of that growth happening 10 minutes to the north of us are going to be on that utility infrastructure that we have? And recently we've been having conversations, sorry Ben, you're right in my view, I keep seeing you. Mayor Kessler from Bexley, Mayor Maggard from Whitehall, Mayor Begany from Reynoldsburg, and myself have started to have regional meetings, forming our own kind of eastern, northeastern coalition. We're going to invite you to one coming soon. You might want to think about that one. but because we're all in similar situations, you know, we're all established communities, and for us, addressing those infrastructure needs is about rebuilding. It's about reinvesting. So again, those are all significant capital investments that are being asked of our community. So how are we going to handle those conversations? And I know I appreciate the efforts at the State House that are happening right now to expand dollars available for infrastructure needs, but those cannot be one-off conversations. They need to be ongoing conversations, and we need to have multiple bites of the apple. As we continue to pull the thread on this project and it continues to evolve, there are going to be more demands that come forward, and we need to be nimble, I believe, at all levels of government as to how we're going to respond to this.
Yeah, just to build on that, those comments, in the short term for New Albany, our biggest infrastructure concern is concrete. Does anyone have a friend who has concrete? But I mean, all joking aside, you know, usually our annual budget for road construction and repairs is around $2 million a year, 1.5 to 2 million. This year we're going to spend about $100 million on road construction. So thanks to the General Assembly for their strong support of the project. But you know, Mink Road, Green Chapel, Miller are completely being redesigned and rebuilt, and it's to get traffic to the Intel site. You know, rural county roads, some of them weren't even properly platted. We had a lot of work to do to get back to ground zero, but those, you know, hopefully are on schedule. Our contractors are working very hard to get that done. The other critical infrastructure need that New Albany always mentions in these conversations is our friends in Columbus. I mean, but for the strong relationship that we have with the city of Columbus in providing water and sewer to our community and to our business campus, none of this would be possible. And so again, it's those strong partnerships that are able to lead to our success, not only in New Albany, but for the region as well. And then you touched on transportation, and I just want to just highlight the fact that, you know, this is probably the one issue that's going to be maybe the most challenging to tackle. We don't have light rail. We don't have subways. We have a CODA system that is really dedicated to Franklin County. We need to plan more regionally, and CODA has really taken on some responsibility with Licking County and the Licking County Commissioners in broadening that conversation and looking at fixes like bus rapid transit and mobility hubs. We'll be talking a lot about those topics over the coming months.
Great. Thank you. We're going to move to questions from our live stream, and we'll also have some questions in person here in just a few minutes. So if you have questions, you can make your way to the microphone now, but if you're watching online, please type your questions into the chat. But before we take those questions, I want to ask one last question for the mayors who are with us today. And we've talked a lot about some of the challenges up front. We've talked a bit about some of the mechanics of just planning for something like Intel. But I'd really like to hear, when you think long-term, when you think out what the future of your communities looks like 10, 15, 20 years from now, tell me what you're most excited about. And let me put it another way. Tell me what are the things that worry you, and then what are the things you're most excited about when you look way into the future and thinking about your communities.
Yeah, I'll just a brief comment. Everyone likes to focus on Chandler, Arizona, which makes sense. That was the last Intel site that really fully developed. But there's some stark differences between Phoenix, Arizona, and Columbus, Ohio, between Chandler, Arizona, and New Albany, Ohio. Companies like Intel, PayPal, Lockheed Martin, Wells Fargo, Chandler attracted a lot of really big corporate partners that helped drive the growth, but it's also the Valley of the Sun. And a lot of folks retire to that area. And so if you look at the growth in Chandler, Arizona, there were multiple reasons why their residential growth peaked and accelerated so quickly. Things are different in New Albany. One of the questions that was asked was, about the schools. And so my biggest concern in our community is maintaining the quality of our school district. And I just don't think that point in the conversation gets mentioned enough. Communities like New Albany that are new and high growth, and the state views as having capacity to maintain their schools at the local level. I'm not criticizing the funding choices of the state. There's a lot of things they need to spend money on. But New Albany, we pay for almost 100% of our school district, not only the construction, but the operation. And so every time that we start a housing start, we need to carefully consider how it impacts our school district. And until that formula changes, we are limited in that conversation because we cannot sacrifice the quality of our school district just for growth. And that's even taking into account that New Albany, when we abate a project, we actually make up to the school district with our own income tax the revenue that they may have, quote, lost in that abatement. So we go that extra mile to make sure that our schools are getting all the economic support they can from the city.
Ditto. That's my brief answer. Actually, I do agree with everything that Mayor Spalding just said, and so I'm not going to repeat that, but I'll just add addendum there. But in terms of challenges that I see, again, infrastructure, immediate challenges for that, how we find our way through that, in terms of long-term planning, long-term funding. Adding jobs is fantastic, and we all want to do that because we're funded by income tax. So the more jobs that we can generate, high quality, high paying jobs that we can generate, the more we're able to add to our income tax base, which then in turn allows us to turn around and reinvest back into our community. So there's that tug of we want to add the jobs, but we have to add the people need the services. How are we going to handle all of that? Looking down the road, and what I envision Gahanna to be 10, 15 years from now, I think, Carrie, was your question. Yeah. A well-planned community that this is an opportunity for us to integrate multimodal transportation. It's an opportunity for us to widen our roadways and look at where we can. We can't win every place, but how do we accommodate and implement traffic improvements that can handle and accommodate the growth of the future, making sure that we are protecting our parks and our open spaces, and that we're adding to the quality of life amenities that our residents enjoy, not taking away from them. But having, will you talk about schools for a minute? And I need to touch on this. So we are in a unique position in Gahanna because our district actually began a high school construction project before the Intel announcement. They had already done projections based on MORPS's projections for population growth and launched a $190 million project on a brand new high school. And another $60 million are being spent on expansions to 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. We believe, and I'm just talking to the superintendent again yesterday, the future growth that we expect to see, the new high school will be able to accommodate that with no problem. The pressure points we may see would be in the elementary schools and middle schools. We go back to a challenge. One of the challenges that we're going to have is if we get to that point where our elementary schools and our middle school cannot sustain and can't support that additional growth down the road, how are we going to handle that? Taxpayers can only bear so much at a local level. We cannot keep going back to them and asking for levies and asking for whether it's to support the school district and property tax or income tax on capital projects, et cetera. So to your point, and that's why I want to circle back on that, looking at how the funding is happening at the state level is so critical to all of our ability to be able to move forward successfully. And that needs to be a priority down at the State House so that we can all move forward into the next decade.
I think my answer is a little different. I'm excited for Johnstown for 5, 10, 15 years down the road because this is the second founding of Johnstown. This is the chance for Johnstown to fix any issues that we've had in the past and move forward. With our industry coming, with our roads, with everything. This is our chance to move it forward into the future. And with that being said, the thing I'm most excited about is I have 3 daughters. One's college, and the other one's kindergarten and 2nd grade. And with the addition of Intel, with the addition of all these suppliers, all these other companies that are coming, my daughters are able to see other women working in these industries. Emily Smith from Intel, she is a phenomenal ambassador for Intel. If you've never met her, please do. Just incredible lady. And she's such an inspiration to young ladies who are growing up who in our generation didn't have the arts and the sciences to follow along. And I feel like the children of Johnstown are seeing this. The STEM program in our schools is going to be incredible because of Intel. So it gives the children of Johnstown a brighter future than what many of us would have had living in that small town. Now, my biggest concern for the future is our schools and how much are we going to overload them. Our current high school holds about 500 kids, and they've already started making plans of a future high school that would hold 1,500. And that's the kind of change they have to start looking at and how the city can work with them to make that change slowly and gradually, and so the schools can provide the best education for the kids. Because the town's ours right now, but we're preparing it for the future. And that's what we've got to do right, because if we do it wrong, what does our future have? So that's what I'm most excited about, is what our children in Johnstown have, specifically the young ladies who are going to have a total different worldview than what we had.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mayors. We're now going to turn to what is a longstanding tradition at CMC, which is to take audience questions. Sophia, I think, is curating the questions from today's live stream. So for those of you here with us today, please make your way to the microphone, which evidently is back there. And I do want to make one programming note, just out of respect for the process here. Please keep your questions to questions, not statements. I was asked to remind folks that questions are supposed to end with question marks. So let's be respectful of that process. And so with that, I guess, Sophia, I'll kick it to you for the first question from the live stream.
Great, thank you so much. This question is from Todd Houston. Will the rapid development and housing shortage cause a large increase in property taxes? And if so, what can be done to protect fixed or low-income residents from the effects of rural gentrification?
Any volunteers?
Well, Todd, that's a great question. Of course, Franklin County is going to be going through their decennial review here this year, and so property values will be evaluated. I think our expectation, talking to the Franklin County auditors, that we're going to see a fairly substantial increase in property values, which in some, depending on how your local property taxes are collected and paid, you may see an increase in taxes. As school districts continue to grow, and if the General Assembly still sees it fit to have them all funded at the local level, we are going to have to ask our taxpayers to help support that growth with additional tax increases. There's no way around it. As far as the fixed income issue, that's a great question, and I know there's conversations going on at the General Assembly focused mainly around tax treatment for older citizens. I don't know if it's morphed into fixed income, but that should be a topic of conversation that we're willing to entertain to make sure that folks that are on fixed income are not pushed out of their current living arrangements.
Question from the audience.
Hi, Ray Paprocki, RS Rock Media. This is for Mayor Barnard. Johnstown, first, applaud you for showing up for your community and sticking around. You mentioned attracting industry as a balance to the community. My question is, you have a highly efficient neighbor in New Albany that knows how to attract business. What kind of industry can Johnstown attract to differentiate itself from others in the community?
I don't know if we really have to differentiate ourselves or want to differentiate ourselves. I've met with Mayor Spalding. Our city manager has met with the city manager of New Albany. I'll be frank. New Albany's done it right. They're the varsity. We're junior varsity. We can learn from them, and we want to learn from them. I would be happy to have any of the industry that they have in their area. And so we're working on job-focused industry that is going to bring the tax revenue to help our schools, to help our city build. I often think of it as the city of Johnstown has kind of won the lottery, and we want to buy this $1 million house, but we're not getting that lottery for another 5-10 years. How do we afford to pay for that house? We've got to get our roads. We've got to get our infrastructure set. Mayor Spalding said water. I don't think many people here realize how crucial water is and how big of an issue water is. It's an unregulated industry or area in Ohio that is kind of a free-for-all. Whoever can get there first gets the water. So we need those jobs. We need those tax dollars come in so that we can expand, so that we can provide the jobs for those coming, so that we can provide the homes for those. Intel's a mile from our city limits. So we know that we're going to get some of that housing. I think Central Ohio is unique, that you could live in Johnstown and work at Honda in Marysville. You can work in Hilliard. People here work and live total different sides of the city. So we realize we're not going to get all the housing, but we have to prepare for some of it. So I think that's my best answer for you on that.
Thank you.
And now I think we're going to take a question from Sophia via the live stream.
That's correct. So we had a question about how is the potential environmental impact being addressed, specifically from the cities who will be impacted by the Intel project.
Yeah, so our economic development team is working very closely with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, the regulator for this site. Intel is one of the world's leading industries, are industry leaders as it relates to environmental protection. They have a great track record of that. They hold themselves out to that high standard, and the city of New Albany is going to work very carefully with them and with the EPA to make sure all of the permits are being met and that the regulations are being followed.
One of our great partners at MORPC, I think is critical to this discussion as well. MORPC has a sustainability advisory committee. I happen to be the vice chair of the Sustainability Advisory Committee, along with Ben Kessler of Bexley. There's a theme through this luncheon. Who's the chair of this of the committee? But that is a conversation that we are having as we continue to meet on a monthly basis and asking those questions. We have representatives of Ohio EPA that sit around the table, as well as other environmental organizations. So making sure that that dialogue continues to happen and the questions are being asked and answered will be critical in our continuing.
Excellent. We have enough time for one more, I think.
We have quite a few questions from our live stream. To go along with the Ben Kessler theme, we've discussed a lot, we've had a lot of conversations about the feedback and partnership with communities on the east side of Central Ohio. Mary McMartin asked, any update on the growth beyond the initial phase? And specifically, are there any similarities between the growth from when Honda came into the corridor around Marysville, Dublin, and Powell that we can learn from?
Yeah, I mean, I think the example everyone points to is the Honda, expansion around the Marysville area. You know, at that time, it was the largest economic development project of the state of Ohio. Intel has eclipsed that. But if you drive through and around Marysville, it's still Ohio, right? There's plenty of farmland. There's plenty of rural corridors. There's still, the city of Marysville is very quaint. So even with that huge economic development partner in their backyard, they still maintain their character. And I have that expectation moving forward with Intel as well, and that's going to take regional collaboration and regional efforts to solve the issues around mobility, transportation, housing, and workforce.
Great. And then my next question is from Richard Needles. And actually, we've had a couple of questions come in about this. We've just discussed the initial phase of the Intel investment, but what's next? What's phase 2? And are we prepared for the future's future?
Well, in short, Intel made an initial commitment to the state of Ohio and the city of New Albany to do the first phase. So those two first fabs, which are under construction today, it's an impressive construction site. The cranes there are enormous. The amount of dirt that's been moved is mind-blowing, and the tons of concrete that have already been poured is impressive. The company on-site building the Intel site, Bechtel, are famously known for doing the Hoover Dam, so I think they can handle the concrete. They're going to be all right. But that's just phase 1. There's room there to actually expand that from a $20 billion investment to a $100 billion investment. If you look at Intel's track record on land that they own stateside, they've usually gone to the full extreme of the build-out. And so we would have some anticipation that over a 30-year horizon, we would see that build-out complete. It's going to be a long process. The other thing that's important to remember, and where Johnstown and our regional partners come into play as far as an opportunity, is that Intel has about 150 suppliers that they have to do business with on a regular basis. 100 of those have a presence in Ohio. 50 have to find a new home. So I see Ted Greer right here. Any of you looking for a home, talk to our friend Ted. He'll find you a great spot. But there's plenty of opportunity around the region for these suppliers to find a place to call home. And I think that's the opportunity that communities like Johnstown, Gahanna, and our regional partners can take advantage of.
And that actually relates to the question you had, Mayor, that came earlier about how do you want to differentiate yourselves. I don't know that, I agree with you, I don't know that we do, because we're already in Gahanna seeing the fruits of that coming with tertiary and secondary suppliers to Intel and to Amgen for that matter. We just had a company that located to Gahanna last year that is a supplier to Amgen, chose Gahanna because they wanted to be close to the airport, the rail, and right next to Amgen, and fell in love with our community. So there are benefits to be had, again, by this continued expansion. It's not just going to be the Intel growth, it's the continued rings that continue to evolve.
I think one of the other things that we take for granted in this room is how lucky we are to have this. I was talking to the mayor of Coshocton not too long ago, and he emphasized, is there any suppliers that can come out this way? All these areas in Ohio that have been beat down for so long would have loved this opportunity. We have this opportunity, and we need to get it across the finish line. And we need to do our best we can to make it a place where more want to come in, that we have the opportunity for more people.
I think we have time for one more question from online. This question is from Trina Averett. What types of plans do you have to address childcare needs for the incoming workforce?
Well, the CHIP Act, and I heard, sorry to keep answering every question, but the CHIP Act actually requires Intel to have a plan as it relates to provide the provision of childcare for their workforce. So there's already some conversations underway on how that part of the requirements will be met. So yes, childcare will be a focus of this project. And again, looking at our regional partners, if you are a childcare operator, we're open for business in Gahanna, in Johnstown, in New Albany. We're looking for those partners as this project starts to develop.
And I would say the governor's initiative that he just introduced to support childcare, recognizing that is a huge challenge as we continue to look at our workforce issues, making sure that there are opportunities for funding to help support childcare-related programs so that we can assist with those workforce demands, I think is something that we'll all be looking to tap into and integrate.
And it's got to be affordable.
Affordable childcare.
Because, for instance, I went to a Subway yesterday to grab something to eat, and there was a lady who had her child in a stroller behind the counter. And I was thinking to myself, what could an affordable daycare do for this family to let her be able to work and focus on her job and do a better job? So it's got to be affordable, and we really need it.
Well, I wish we had more time, but we're coming up on 1 o'clock. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Neil Durst.
Well, I hope you found today's forum encouraging as you think about the future growth of our region. And so we learned that you have to be intentional in planning and think regionally. And also, at the heart of it all, to use our new slogan, Ohio's new slogan, kindness and civility still matters. So thank you to today's sponsors, GBQ and the Otterbein University, and our partner, the Grange Insurance Otterbein Center. Thank you to our virtual seat patrons and to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for supporting today's live stream. And a very special appreciation to today's speakers, Mayor Barnard, Mayor Jadwin, Mayor Spalding, and our host, Carrie McCarthy. Let's give them all a round of applause. So, inside of your program is this insert. So we want you to take a look at this because you want to make plans to attend next Wednesday evening, not the day, don't come here, for this special forum at the Columbus Museum of Art. There's no fee, but registration is encouraged. We'll mark Jane Scott's departure from CMC and Sophia Fittner's arrival with a special evening program that starts at 5:30 p.m. And again, that's at the Columbus Museum of Art. Please take a moment to answer the short survey that's on the back of this to let us know how we did today and to let us know your feedback. We could not do this without you. Thank you for joining us, and see you next Wednesday evening at the Columbus Museum of Art. Have a great day.